So, I know, everything with the caveat that you really just, although you've been with the district, you really just stepped into this role full time, on a permanent basis recently. What's been the biggest challenge you faced right off the bat?
I would say my biggest challenge has been ensuring that our teachers feel valued and appreciated when they come back this school year. It's a difficult time in public education, and prioritizing our teachers and being sure they know how much we appreciate and value them. They're our biggest asset when it comes to ensuring a high quality education for our children, and so it's important that they feel appreciated.
Is that even more difficult in this funding environment?
I think it definitely is. Teachers do the work because it's purpose-driven work. They don't get into it necessarily for a paycheck, while simultaneously they're living in the same economy we all are, and being sure that we can provide every opportunity for them to feel appreciated, knowing that we were not able to provide raises this year. So there's a burden in that for us, that's a reality, but it's part of the challenge.
Yeah, we know that funding hasn't changed now in 5 years, and we know how much prices have gone up on just about everything in that same span of time. With the legislature not acting on funding, how many positions have you had to freeze?
This past school year, we didn't make any changes into our classroom teacher positions. We absorbed just over 100 positions. Some were campus positions, not classroom teachers. We absorbed some administrative positions. We had some differentiated staffing we were providing to campuses that had higher need. We would provide additional support in terms of administrative support. We had to absorb those. We absorbed several central office positions, positions that were vacated by retirees or resignations. My former position, for example, I'm going to be doing both of those for the time being, just to ensure that we continue to prioritize our classroom. So we've absorbed over 100, but we still have a deficit in spite of that.
Yeah. And what does that mean? You've absorbed 100. That means 100 positions that normally would have been filled if you had the funding.
That's right. So my position before, I was deputy superintendent over teaching and learning and academic programs. So there's a purpose for that role, but I will not be replacing it. We've absorbed that position for now. So that means that other people will be doing that work, me included, to be sure that we keep our priorities in the classroom and all of our resources there. So positions, we have some positions in our business office, positions, our assistant director of transportation, and executive director of HR, really and truly a facilities manager. Any position that we could reallocate personnel to help, that's what we've done. And it's not because we don't feel like we needed those positions. Clearly we do. We're a fast growth system. And our needs continue to grow, but we are doing everything that we can within our control to ensure that we can focus on our classroom.
I know one of the things that I see in my children's school are just how important the folks who do the interventions are, who can get in the classroom, pull out a student who may be struggling in reading or math, and give them a little bit of extra attention to help them along. With the funding as it is right now, these intervention specialists, are they being asked to do more at more different places?
And some of those are positions that were absorbed. So we have bilingual specialists, ESL specialists, instructional coaches, reading interventionists. We have support positions across our campuses, and those have always been allocated based on data. So a campus with higher needs, maybe students that are more at risk, would have more support. That is still the case. They will still have more support, but everyone has a little less support. So our campuses that perhaps the data suggests they don't need as much support, They will have minimal support this year. And the sad thing about that is there isn't a campus that we have that doesn't have children with needs. And so it really doesn't matter how at risk, every campus has needs. And we've had to reduce that and just shift how we provide those supports.
And does that also entail some of these specialists kind of hopping around to servicing different schools, not having a home?
It does. And one of the priorities for me in that work is ensuring that those specialists still feel valued. You know, I circle back to that because they're part of our staff, they're part of our family. And when you're a teacher, you're connected to that community, you're connected to your colleagues. You know one another, and that makes those relationships make the work more accessible probably for the children. And so when specialists are having to bounce between campuses, building those relationships becomes difficult. And we know that. We've always had positions that are shared across campuses, but we will have more of that now. And that, of course, interferes with the ability to develop relationships.
Are you surprised that it's taken this long to get the legislature to address funding?
Sure. I am discouraged by it. That may be a better word, discouraged by the reality of it. I don't feel like there is anything else we can do to advocate for it. We've continued to educate our community. We've continued to try and get more people to understand the situation. But the reality is of our times, we've just not had any luck with that. And so it's discouraging because the reality is we'll have 33,000 students here next week that really, it doesn't matter to them what's taken place in terms of Texas public school finance. And we have to provide them a high quality education, and we will, but that's becoming more and more difficult.
I've talked to several administrators and superintendents about this, the issue and what could be coming in the next legislature. In some ways, do you feel like public school funding is being held hostage by the voucher fight?
I would say that the last session there was no question about that. I'm not in their seat. I do not do their work. I am not having to consider everything they do. But I would say without a doubt, it feels like it was held hostage based upon the educational savings accounts. Mm-hmm.
That was the issue that no one could get past, and if there wasn't going to be an agreement on that, then there just wasn't going to be anything done.
That's right. And as I've told our community, our teachers, our different community organizations when I've been out, we're all going to the grocery store. We all know what's happened with our economy. We're all paying more for eggs, more for bread, more for milk. We're doing that as a school system. We're paying more for every resource that we use, sadly, except for our teachers. We're having to pay more for every contract. We're having to pay more for utilities. We're having to pay more for gas, for transportation. But the one resource we can control is salaries, and that's the one thing that really honors the people that we need and depend upon the most.
Yeah. You know, in light of that, I know Denton ISD started the program, sort of the Grow Your Own Teacher program. What does that program mean to you as someone who has such deep roots here in the community?
Our Teach Denton program is fantastic. So this school year we will have, I think it's 76 teachers teaching in our classrooms that came out of our Teach Denton program. And that's only capturing the students that went through our program. I was at our new teacher orientation the other day, and I encountered a teacher, and she stopped me and we talked for a moment, and she knew my last name from my boys being in school with her. And she said, you know, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for Teach Denton and my associate principal at Geyer High School. I said, well, tell me about that. And she said, when I was in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was feeling, you know, kind of unsure about what to do. And Mr. Haley, our associate principal, he's now our principal at Braswell High School, he introduced me to our Teach Denton program. I got into that, and I learned that I loved teaching. And now she's back teaching at her own elementary school, so where she went to school. Another story from that is One of the teachers that I hired when I was a principal, she was at our new teacher. She's now one of our instructional coaches. She was there in conversation with a teacher that had taught her when she was a Denton ISD student, in conversation with a student she had taught. So it was kind of 3 generations of our graduates there together, all coming back to be a part of our system. So that's what Teach Denton is. It's getting our graduates back into our classrooms and letting them help us continue to grow our community.
How important, when you talk about the issue of recruiting and retention, how vital is that program in light of, obviously salary can be a big enticement and motivator. When you don't have that carrot, so to speak, how important is it to have a program that can perhaps draw on someone's community ties?
I think the program's invaluable. I truly do. I think high schoolers struggling to figure out exactly what they want to do, this connects a child and lets an adult. Our program facilitates adults in our buildings reaching out to children and saying, this is what I see in you, and this is what I think you can do. And sometimes the children don't see it themselves and they don't know that's a possibility for their own future, and they connect, and then they go to school, they come back. We have 2 great universities here in town to help with that. They come back and then they're in our classrooms. It's huge. And the reality is teaching is purpose-driven work. When I started teaching, I didn't start teaching because of the salary. You're very centered on your why when you teach, and being able to be a part of our community and do that and be a part of the community where you grew up, I think we honor that.
You think there's something special about being a teacher in the community where you yourself
without a
went
doubt
to school? Yeah.
And I know that to be true because I had several people stop me and tell me that. The very first principal I hired in this new role was a graduate of ours. He had graduated from Geyer High School. And so he's excited to be here. He wants to be a part of Denton ISD because it's his home.
Recently, in the last couple months, I know 2 of the principals were indicted for using their school emails to encourage and people to get out and vote. Do you think that indictment was an overreach or appropriate?
It's a really great question. It felt at the time like an overreach, there's no doubt. In light of the circumstances that are going on politically, it absolutely feels like it's overreach. But it's really not mine to...
How so? In what way?
What do you mean?
Like in overreach in what way?
Well, I feel like they're trying to advocate for public education, and that's what our role is to advocate for public education. When you're a principal at a campus that is highly at risk, and you know that those children come to you every day because they're dependent upon you, I refer to that group of children as school dependent. Many of them get their meals from us. They get a lot of support during the school day from us because, quite honestly, not all of their families have the ability to provide that. So when you're a principal at a campus that you see the children every day that are dependent upon the resources that we have and can provide for them, I think their job is to continue to advocate for those children. That's who they are. That's who we are as public educators, is to ensure our kids have every opportunity that we can provide them.
I know that in light of that, I know that the state mandates certain class sizes at different levels, and especially for the younger kids. In light of not having the funding to say add another certified teacher to a classroom, how do you manage that when you have more 3rd graders than you can staff at a particular school?
So really, in light of the budget circumstances this year, we have not made any changes in terms of our staffing ratios. We still comply with 22-to-1 in every classroom that's possible for our elementary grades, except for 5th grade. 5th grade doesn't have that same state limit on it. And then we've maintained the same middle and high school ratios for the last several years. So we haven't reduced that. Now, We are a fast growth system. So as a fast growth system, we have particular parts of our district where capacity is a problem. So we're opening we're opening Martinez Elementary School in our Braswell zone this year. We were anticipating about 350, 400 students at that school. I just left a meeting before coming over here. We're up over 500 there already. So some of those classrooms may have 23 and 24 in them that are designed for 22 to 1. But that's not because of a budget issue, that's a capacity issue. We did not open Hill Elementary this year because of budget circumstances, also in that same area. So we will have some classrooms that'll have 24 in them in our elementary, but in our fast growth part of our district, that's actually not uncommon. It's not ideal, and we've worked pretty intentionally for the last 20 years to stay ahead of the growth, but we just have portions of our district that are expanding.
How difficult is that on the parents that may have to send their third grader to a school that's not 2 blocks away?
It is not ideal. When I was a principal and started in 2005. And at that time, in another portion of our district, actually in the southern portion of our district, we were experiencing the same type of growth. And I would have children every year, the first 3 or 4 years until we opened the next school, that we would hit our capacity. We would exceed our capacity by a few students per classroom, and then we would have to have those students transported to a neighboring school. So it's not ideal. It's hard to connect with your school community when you're having to be transported to another campus. So we prioritize the children that have been in the community, so we always have the children that were there previously be able to return to that campus, and children that are new to the attendance zone, they are the first to, if we reach capacity, they're the first to have to be transported, and then they're the first ones on the wait list that get to come back as soon as spaces become available. So,
how do your principals message that, to those families?
Everything's about a relationship. So the receiving campuses, they do a really great job of welcoming them with open arms. And in fact, we've had circumstances where the families that have had to, we call them overflow, they've had to overflow to another campus. They will choose to stay at the campus they overflow because they get in, they get settled, and they connect and develop relationships. So just being a welcoming part of the community is a priority for us, being that we invite everyone to be a part of the schools. And so once the children have overflowed, they don't always return to where they were zoned, even if it's close to home.
I know there was a lot of enthusiasm about Hill Elementary. How disappointing was that not to be able to open it this month?
It's disappointing anytime you have a facility on the ground that you can't open it. But again, we're educators, and we're going to be ready next week for school with smiles on our faces and ready to greet the kids that come in. So it is disappointing when you have challenges like that, but it's a reality, and we just adjust and improvise and take care of business when adults and children come in our buildings. So,
what are your expectations in terms of the legislature and Hill's future for next school year?
My expectations in regards to Hill Elementary is we won't have an option but to open it next year. The fantastic thing about Denton ISD is children keep coming. We continue to grow. We slowed a little through the pandemic and the pandemic recovery years, but we've been closely monitoring our enrollment, and we are up significantly over last year already. So we do kind of a year-over-year day of, same day comparison, and we're up pretty significantly higher than we were on the same day last year. So we won't be able to not open Hill. I guess that's barring some new challenge, but we're not going to have facilities for all of our children if we don't, because that particular part of our zone is growing. And quite honestly, we will also intend to open Reeves Elementary next year, which is inside the city of Denton. So that'll be the first elementary school we've opened inside the city of Denton since 2007, but that's because the growth is happening inside the city of Denton limits as well.
How, how do you manage that with, you've got a budget, you've got these operating costs. How do you manage that?
This year, as we planned to open Martinez, we were very strategic and intentional about where we put support for last school year. So for example, Union Park Elementary and Sandbrook Elementary were both well over capacity last year in anticipation of opening Martinez. To support them, we provide additional counseling support, additional administrative support. And so that allows us, number one, for those staff members to begin developing relationships with the children at those and the families in those buildings, but it also helps us to transition them with the children. So it's more of a staff to student ratio than it is the building needs X number of people. When Union Park reached 800 students, they needed more staff. And so we put the staff there, and then they moved to Martinez. So I anticipate we'll have to do that probably at Evers Park, here at Newton Razor this year, because these are campuses that will help fill into Reeves Elementary as the growth continues next year. So when enrollment rises, we add staff, and that will allow us to transition that staff to the new facilities.
Taking over this role, what are you, I guess, what are you most excited about? About sort of getting to, when you now have a chance to direct the district to some extent, like what are you most excited about personally?
Everything in my background is about teaching and learning. So I started as a classroom teacher. I went through, so to say, the ranks, as people would say, here in Denton ISD. I taught, I was an AP, I was a principal. Everything about my background has been in teaching and learning. And I'm really excited to use that influence to ensure all our children are receiving really high quality education. We have fantastic teachers, we have great leaders, and really ensuring that we're all on the same page working together to really accomplish our one purpose, which is producing a graduate that's ready for college, career, or life. And I'm excited about that. I talked to our principals about that last week, about everyone that's not on a campus, myself included. Our role is to support you. And if what we're doing doesn't feel like support for you to be sure students can learn and teachers can teach, then we need you to pick up the phone and call, because we're here to ensure that your teachers can do their job. So that's what I'm excited about. The other work I do, I've been an administrator for a number of years, so I know there's a lot more to that, but it's clearing the path. I mean, a lot of the other work is clearing the path so that teaching and learning can take place.